Songs of War was a story I've been wanting to tell for years, even before I was creating Minecraft animations. The vision from the beginning was always to make a universe that the viewer could engage in. The world was built fully to scale so people could one day explore it all. The characters were designed in such a way that the skins could easily be worn in-game. I don't think anything quite like this has been done before, so there was a lot of risk going in. Fortunately, the project created a lot of excitement, and we were able to put together a team to create something which I think is truly unique. Hey everyone, David here, Director of Songs of War, and welcome to the behind the scenes of Episode 1. With each episode, we'll be releasing a behind the scenes to explore the episode, show how it came together, and hopefully provide you with some more insight on how everything was made. The series opens with a prologue, a narration detailing an important event in the world's history. I talked a lot with my co-director Samuel Kyber about whether to do a prologue at all, as it's kind of a lot of lore dump real quick, without meeting any actual characters, but we felt it was almost necessary because of how different this world was and things need to be explained like songs. The other function of it was to set up almost a sort of preview of what this universe can be like, despite times having moved on. The music in the series is completely an original score done by After Infinity, or Dan as we call him. We wanted to create a long, singular flow of music for the prologue, but also go between many different moods and establish some of the themes that we'll be hearing later in the series. The first version of the prologue was just a narration with some real basic piano beats set to screenshots taken from within the world. Nothing had even been animated.
Reluctantly, the clans agreed and held a tournament to determine which Shardoni would become their champion and wield all 4 prime songs.
The series, despite being mostly original lore, is based very closely on the lore established in core Minecraft. You know, there's the Nether, the End, the undead zombies, and skeletons, and a lot should be familiar to those who play Minecraft, but with just a lot more added on top. We did change a few things to better adapt our story. Some you've already seen, and others you'll be seeing later. There were a lot of really nice shots in the prologue, but one of my favorites is of the Ender Knights walking out of the mist. I brought the light level down to the point where you only really see their silhouettes, and gradually the lights on their armor begin to illuminate as they get closer. I also added some volumetric lights to get the rays coming from behind them, some nice wet reflections on the floors to really exaggerate the colors of their armor, and faked some 3D dynamic mist by adding dozens of little 2D planes in a row. The Ender Dragon rig was a big improvement for us. The Ender Dragons are very important in this series, so there were a few things I had to do to make them really work with the story. First, they needed to be each slightly unique so you could tell the different dragons apart. Just as important, however, was we needed a way to do better wings. Default Minecraft wings, they fold out kind of plainly, and they get in the way when you actually want the dragons to walk around. So when ZophieCat started working on the rig, we pushed for a more anatomically correct bone structure. This was the first GIF I put together comparing the old wing design to the new, and immediately I knew it was a success, and to this day I think the Ender Dragon is one of the best rigs in the series. And you haven't even seen the best part yet. The Ender Dragon flame effects. This was one of the very few times where we actually used fire simulation, although I did a lot of tricks to save a bunch of render time and to make it more efficient. There was a bit of challenge, however, when setting up the opening shot, as the flames kept going in front of the Death Singer and covering him up. I ended up creating this rather strange cylinder collider shape to keep the fire going on either side of him, but still appear to be hitting the shield. In summary, the prologue was long, took ages to organize, and it was actually one of the last things I left in production. That way I would have a lot of improvements from animating all the other scenes, and I could apply that knowledge to make the prologue the best it could be. When the prologue ends, we move to the Walls of Time, a location far in the north with these giant walls that tell the tales of the world's history. The design I had was that they were literally these huge walls of stone that were mined around when hollowing out the room. Every time a new historical event worthy of being recorded happened, they'd mine further along the back side of the room and carve out more walls to write more history. That's why in the far end of the place you can actually see some of the scaffolding and equipment where they're preparing to continue mining should the need arise for more walls. I wanted a really dark and cold look for the place, so these big monolithic walls really stood out, receding almost entirely out of sight as they kind of disappear towards the ceiling. I think the color palette for the final renders for this scene was some of my favorites in the series, with the dark blacks kind of lit by the prismarine cyan colors and only periodically broken up by the warm orange from the lanterns. The prologue is then revealed to not just be a total narration, but rather it was a character reading off of one of these walls, which I think helps make it a bit more immersive that way. The story is read by Thalius, whose voice was just perfect for it.
They were given to the masters of the 4 Ardoni clans as a sign of peace and unity. Had some minor breaks there, and then we can do it again.
Thalius Sindaris plays a major role in the series. He's very old, even for an Ardoni, and is one of the few people alive who was also alive during the events of the Great War he was just narrating about. We also meet one of his friends, Hawken. This was a character that went through a lot of rewrites. We bounced around a bit between making him too silly or too serious. We wanted him to be a bit fun and eccentric, but not set too light of a tone so early in the series. One of his early designs we liked a lot, until someone pointed out it was very similar to another character from television, so we redid him almost completely, which I think ended up with actually a nicer result. There were some interesting choices we had to make early on in the production, such as how much we'd be following Minecraft rules. Unfortunately, I don't think there's ever a clearly defined line, but we definitely erred on the side of more realism. People can't place cubic meters of stone everywhere. However, we do have the concept of an inventory. Hawken's able to draw both his fish and his weapon from his inventory. Weapons then exist on the bodies to free up inventory space as well as help identify characters.
Because they are still here.
The big climax of the first episode is at Mount Velgrin, where they discover the Voltaris are indeed still around, and we're introduced to Tigran Voltaris.
You must be Thalius Sindaris. I've heard many things about you.
After the Death Singer died, he rose up to lead the remaining Voltaris scattered and unorganized. This was his first design, but then we updated it to a slightly newer design to get kind of an angrier look and deeper colors. Then later we added better shading to all the Ardoni, which gave him a little bit of an older look. Most important, however, was making him a threat. When villains show up in Songs of War, they shouldn't always lose and be forced to retreat, but should actually feel dangerous and the confrontation is dramatic. This fight was done by Zillion. We thought it essential to work in a major fight sequence in the first episode, as they are a big part of the series. The fight sound design in general was a big improvement from our past animations. Dan and I recorded a lot of custom sounds, including metal hits and scrapes. We then used these elements and designed more stylistic sword hits and movements to make everything seem just that much more intense. Choosing the lighting for the final fight was a big process. I did tons of different environment ideas. At first I wanted it to be really snowy with an intense blizzard, that way in the final shot everything was just gonna kinda get lost in this big snowstorm as it fades to pure white. Unfortunately, none of these song effects were showing up well on the white background, so I went with one of the more dark nighttime ones so these songs and effects would really punch a bit better. I think this was a good choice because it also allowed for the nice moonlight rays, which helped frame shots. One thing I wanted to design for Songs of War was an efficient misty atmospheric effect. This was something I had tried many times during production of the series, but always failed. You can see my attempts resulted in intersecting lines, and when I tried it again I had the same problem. I ended up cheating a little bit and having the noise mapped to the mist, which prevented the lines, but unfortunately led to a little bit of projection issues, hopefully no one noticed. I also used a similar misty effect when fading to Northwind. Initially there was just a straight fade from white, but having it kind of come through the physical mist and reveal things more naturally was a lot better for transition. Tigran's Energy Ball song was a very important one. It was made mostly of these just spheres with displacement and nice energy textures. On the outside are these rings that provide little bits of energy arcing around the core. Dan created the sound design for all the songs, and we described these Agressium songs as being very unstable. We wanted to show it being powerful and visually impressive, but not make it seem like songs were unbalanced. He has a powerful song, but it's very slow and relatively easy to evade. Also, Haakon is able to block it with a shield, although the shield is entirely destroyed and he seems to get hurt from it as well. It was extremely important for me to create a balance in the universe so that no character or faction seemed too overpowered. The other song we see being used is Thalias's Teleport. We wanted something real short and fast, more like a quick blink. It leaves behind these nice clean trails, but we also had to illuminate his skin to really get that bright flash of light. The sound here was mostly on the charge up, and when the actual activation happened, we wanted a crack and an echo, like air rushing back into the void, similar to lightning strikes. One of the other big effects showcased here, apart from the songs, was Thalias's enchanted sword. In Songs of War, we deviated a bit from Minecraft with our enchantments and gave them both an idle and an activated state. For Thalias, we wanted something pretty clean and elegant, so a basic aura surrounds his sword and it leaves behind a nice clean streak. I went through a lot of streak effects and tested it in old scenes, but you can see here that the automatic approach wasn't really that noticeable. Ended up doing something a bit more manual where I'd move this big stretchy thing along behind his sword. Eventually, later in the series, I did find an automatic way to do it that still looked pretty good. There's actually a little bit of this episode that got deleted very last minute. We wrote a bit where Haakon is kind of undeterred by Tigrin's threats. He just starts throwing some snowballs at him and brushes all the danger off. On paper, it was this nice little break in tension and a fun little moment with Haakon, but when we went to put all the scene together, we could see it was just completely breaking the mood. There wasn't a good way to shift from dark music to something comedic and then right back to dark without it just feeling kind of jarring.
My name is Tigrin Voltaris.
Yeah, we're not afraid of you. Thalias can take on all 7 of you. Right, Thalias?
Your insolence will be remembered, scholar. As for you, Thalias Sindaris, I know.
The opening to the series instead then ends on a dark tone. Haakon died, Thalias barely escaped, and the Voltaris are still out there. Thanks everyone for watching Songs of War Episode 1, as well as these behind the scenes. From everyone involved, we hope you enjoyed what you saw and are excited for more. If this series does interest you, please consider sharing it with your friends. I often get asked by people if there's any way they can help out, and honestly the best way to help is just watch the videos and share them. So thanks again, and I'll see you next episode.